Hello, Michael.
Hey, Sammy, how are you?
I'm good. Thanks for making the time to hang out and talk about the NBA and the Boston Celtics and the Big Three.
Oh, no problem. Yeah, really look forward to it.
Yo, welcome to my Summer Lair. I'm your host, Sammy. Couldn't guard White Mamba if my life depended on it. Younan. On July 31st, 2007, the Boston Celtics traded for Kevin Garnett to solidify their Big Three and reboot the super team era of the NBA. I want to go back to that time. Unfortunately, not via a DeLorean or even a hot tub time machine. That's dope. But with a book. The Big Three: Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett, Ray Allen, and the Rebirth of the Boston Celtics. This book was written by Boston sports writer Michael Holley. This is his seventh book, having previously written books about Tom Brady, Belichick, the Red Sox, but this is his first NBA book. I really dug it. I hadn't understood what happened to Rondo with the Celtics. Remember how good that was? Nor did I fully grasp how the Big Three came together until I read this saga. About 20 minutes into this conversation, I asked Michael a question about his Christian faith. But really, I'm curious about faith in the larger sense. Whether you go to church or not, sports is all about faith. Faith the GM will draft the right player, or faith the owners will hire the best coach. Everyone who has seen a last minute shot go up in the air can relate to prayer. The way you hold your breath and just will that ball into the hoop. Or the murmured prayers when a key player twists their ankle or bangs their knee. Please, God, let it be okay. Please, God, I hope it's not that bad. Hope every single season starts with promise and potential for future glory, like a Christian expecting heaven. And of course, redemption. When Kevin Garnett was traded to Boston, that was his redemption. The Celtics saved Kevin Garnett. As an analogy, spiritual faith mirrors the passion and joy fans have for their NBA team. And yet, for all the hope and faith and prayers, answered and unanswered, for all the preaching and teaching, the burden of prophecy, and the weight of legacy, sometimes a team just needs a miracle, or two, or three. Miracles are spiritual surprise parties. And in sports, for the fans of one team, miracles are so uplifting. Did you see that? Miracles. Here now is my conversation with sports writer, TV host, university professor Michael Holley, whose NBA book is The Big Three: Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett, Ray Allen, and yes, the rebirth of the Boston Celtics. How are you feeling about the Celtics this year?
Frustrated. Yeah, frustrating.
Yeah.
Confused.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're uneven and inconsistent.
Yeah.
Had some injury problems, and last night at least they just weren't playing hard enough.
Yeah, the injuries is what I was gonna say. Like, I can give them a little bit of grace for that, but like you said, they are uneven. They're a little bit up and down. It's like, I don't know if they're bored or just not really committed to it or what it is.
Yeah, it's weird. It's really weird to see. I didn't see it coming.
Mm-hmm.
I really can't I can't compare them to any other Celtic team I've seen in the past few years. That one, then again, Kyrie's last season in Boston, that team had a better record, but that team was hard to figure out too. Looked like they figured it out. Remember, they went to the playoffs. They swept Indiana, and then they won their first game against Milwaukee in the second round. Then they just lost four straight and went down in a blaze of just mediocrity.
The Miami Heat showed last year too that like it's almost like the regular season doesn't necessarily always matter. You know what I mean? As long as you just can get in the playoffs, then you can kind of maybe refocus, regroup, and then kind of rumble. But I'm not sure if they can if the Celtics.
If you have it in you.
Yeah, if you have
Only
it in you.
If you have it in you.
Mm-hmm.
Only if it's in you. If it's not in you, you can reset and refocus, and then you start the playoffs, and the same thing happens. So you really got to have something special. I'm just not sure. I think this group, you got to play hard in the regular season and figure it out because you're just so young. Your two best players are 24 and 22. So they need to learn that. Even they, as great as they are, they need to learn how to carry a team through an entire season, which they've never done.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, they got to do that too. Oh yeah. So you ready? You ready to go?
I'm ready to go.
All right.
We're gonna shift from the present to the past, and so congratulations, your book, The Big Three: Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett, Ray Allen, and the Rebirth of the Boston Celtics, is your 7th book project, but it's your first NBA book. So you've covered now like Tom Brady, the Red Sox. So I want to start at the end. In the acknowledgments, you admit to struggling with self-doubt as well as the long process to get this book done. Why was this book so hard? This is your first basketball book, but it's not your first book.
Yeah, it was. That's a good question. I think it was hard for a couple of reasons. One, it wasn't the original idea, and so in the original idea, anytime you got a book idea and you think it's going to be a good project and you're committed to it, and it doesn't turn out the way you thought it would, you know, there's some humbling that goes on there, and there's some disappointment. So the book, even though that first idea, even though I'm glad I didn't write that book, I know that now. But I'm saying, going back at the time, at the beginning of the 2012-2013 season, that was supposed to be the idea of following a team as it tried to recapture, you know, one more championship run. You know, Ray Allen was already in Miami.
Mm-hmm.
And Garnett and Pierce and Rondo were the only 3 guys remaining from the 2008 championship team. Doc Rivers was still there as the coach. And so, you know, I thought, yeah, this is a good book idea. I did some traveling with the Celtics, really put some work into it. But I think, you know, midway through that season, it was clear to me that wasn't quite the book that I was looking for. And I tried to salvage it in the middle of 2013. I couldn't salvage it then. I didn't just walk away from it. I had all that research, but you know, that's not quite it. And so you think about that. That was 2013. Then, you know, 14, 15 happens. Then 2016, I'm doing another book on Belichick and Brady. In 2017, I did another book on David Ortiz and his memoir.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started teaching at Boston University. So now at this point, I'm 5 years removed from the original book idea, 5 or 6 years removed from it. And then you start to think, okay, was this meant to be, or what's it going to be? And then it just hit me. It hit me that that's what it was. It was supposed to be the Big Three book all along. I had some distance from the story. And with distance came clarity. Now, the self-doubt is just the amount of respect I have for the basketball writing community. I mean, there are just so many good books out there
Mm-hmm.
across the NBA, all teams, but specifically books on the Celtics. Man, you got a team that's been around since 1946, so there have been many, many authors who have written about the Celtics. I wanted to focus on writing a book that would add something, that add a new layer to the canon that's already well established.
You sound like you know those classic scenes in cop TV shows and movies where there's always that scene where the chief takes a hotshot cop off the case because he's too close to it. You know what I mean? And
Yeah,
that's
right.
what it sounds like. Like, you know what I mean? Because, like you said, you're not writing a quote-unquote just an NBA book about some team like maybe the Portland Trailblazers or the T-Wolves or some other teams. Like, you're writing about the Celtics, and there's so much history that comes with it. It's almost like a burden. Like, I almost feel bad for the kids who get drafted for the Celtics, right? Because there's a different type of responsibility than if they go to another team.
Yeah, that's something that's interesting. You look at it that way, and you know those guys who, because I think some guys are the guys who know the history. They could be overwhelmed by it, or they could be excited by the history. Like I remember Paul Pierce, the rookie, and I just knew he had it from his rookie year. He loved being a part of it, even though he didn't grow up as a Celtics fan.
California
He knew
kid.
he knew what Celtics Lakers meant, and I think he wanted to step into that, that tradition. Antoine Walker was the same way. He loved it. He remembers his first workout, Celtics workout. He had Larry Bird there. He had Dennis Johnson there, Red Auerbach. So he loved, Celtics. But, there are other players who don't look at it as a burden at all. They look at it as, I'm not even aware of the history. I guess their ignorance is bliss in some ways. But you bring up a good point when it comes to like this team. You're going to write about the Celtics. You better be right. You better be ready to talk about something of substance. Now, I liked your Timberwolves example. I'll pick on them, but I will not pick on the Portland Trailblazers because, for my money, the best basketball book ever written was actually written about the Trailblazers, and that's David Halberstam's Breaks of the Game.
Yep.
And that is so good. And so what's so great about it is, well, there are many things great about it, but he was in the moment. This is like, I think he focused on a period from, say, 70, just after the championship. So I say 78 to 80.
Mm-hmm.
And so the numbers didn't match up. There's no salary cap at the time in the league. The league was smaller, but it was so true and so genuine, his approach, and so novel, the way he approached it, that you can look back at it in 2020, 40 years later, and say, oh, that's still relevant, even though the numbers change. So, yeah, that's what you want. You want to be able to produce a book. Not necessarily David Halberstam. Not many of us out there can play in that arena. But to have a book that will speak some truth in the moment and going forward.
Yeah, and in your case, your book starts with the sale of the Celtics. And in the past, 10 years or so, we've seen, the Jazz recently got sold. I think it was just last year. Warriors and, of course, the Clippers got sold. But what's remarkable is that, the new Celtic owners didn't just buy a sports team. They bought this whole family, the Celtic family. And I get, the Clippers and the Warriors don't have that culture. Like you were just saying, Portland Trailblazers have some of that culture. But, buying the Celtics, they got Red Auerbach and Bill Russell and Tommy Heinsohn and ML Carr, all these greats. That's incredibly unusual for when you just quote unquote buy a sports team.
Yeah, and I think this, Sammy. I mean, they had good timing. Rick Grossbeck had good timing. He really wanted to buy the Red Sox, who were sold a year earlier. And his dad is a co-founder of Continental Cablevision and a business professor and a huge baseball fan, and Rick is a baseball fan. They really wanted to be in on Red Sox ownership. That didn't happen. He looked around. He said, "Oh, the Bruins, they're not going to be sold anytime soon. The Patriots, the Kraft family, is going to hold on to that. Now the Red Sox just sold. If I want any chance of owning a Boston sports team, and I want to do that, it's going to be the Celtics." And it was just great timing because Paul Gaston, I think he had gotten to the point, he wasn't as invested in the team as he had been previously. He hadn't been to many games in the 2 or 3 years before he met with Grossbeck. And the Celtics are still a valuable franchise. So, look, you can make a lot of money if they're a bit of a headache for you and you have different interests. You can make a lot of money, sell the team, and go about your life and just hope that the new owners are ones who understand what the Celtics tradition is all about, and everything worked out for everybody. Paul Gaston got a record price for his team. Rick Grossbeck was into it. He's a local guy, and he decided, yes, we got Celtics tradition, and that's important, but we also have some revenue streams that we haven't tapped into. If we run this thing the right way, really, bring our corporate expertise and our entrepreneurial expertise to running this basketball team, we can make a lot of money and we can win a championship, and that's what happened.
And is that why the subtitle is The Rebirth of the Boston Celtics? Because I know as fans, right, we tend to focus on what happens on the parquet floor, but you're also talking about now the office and the organization. Who were some of the early...
Both.
Yeah, right? So who were some of the early hires that stood out to you once the new owners bought the team?
Yeah, I mean, you think about it. look, at the end of the 1990s, the Celtics just went 0 for the 1990s, just missed the playoffs every year. So I think the last year they made the playoffs, I'm just trying to think of this, I think it was 1995, at the end of the 90s. So they 95 season, they were an eighth seed. They lost to Shaquille O'Neal's Orlando Magic. So that was the last game at Boston Garden. I remember they lost that playoff series in 4 games. And so, you make it in 95, 96, nothing. 96, 97, you have the worst record in team history. 97, 98, you got Rick Pitino coming over, and they got a significant win improvement, but they were so bad the year before. So you add 21 wins, plus 21 wins, that just gets you to 36. So that's not a playoff team. And the next year they didn't make the playoffs. So they really were sliding out of the 1990s, not even contenders. And once Pitino left, they got a little bit of a bump. But the rebirth is not just getting a bump and getting yourself to the conference semifinals or even the conference finals, but really looking at yourself as a championship organization, because that's how the Celtics have always been judged. The 90s are the only decade in Celtics history where they didn't have a championship. You get championships in the 80s and the 70s and the 60s and the 50s, and you get nothing in the 90s. So for some organizations, you say, hey, what's the big deal? Yeah, we got one in the 80s or one in the 70s. Isn't that good enough? No, not in Boston, it's not. So that rebirth was getting this franchise, stepping up your marketing game, stepping up your business game, your game presentation, and the talent on the roster as well. So Rick Grossbeck, he invites Steve Kaliuka to be his co-owner. Then they invite Bob Epstein to be their co-owner. They hire Danny Ainge. Danny Ainge hires Doc Rivers. They bring in Daryl Morey. Daryl Morey brings in Mike Zarin. I mean, these are some of the big names still. Rich Gotham, also the president of the organization. These are some of the people who are either still there right now or big names in the NBA. You got Daryl Morey in Philadelphia, Doc Rivers in Philadelphia right now, and Zarin came in as an intern, is now the assistant general manager. So that's the rebirth of not just taking a team and saying, oh, we can make some money here, let's keep it going, let's satisfy the fans, we'll make the playoffs, we'll bow out in the second round, and we'll do it again next year. No, really raising that standard back to a level that longtime Celtics fans were used to.
You used the word timing a couple of times. You've also said how they didn't win anything during the 90s, and that's clear too. The 90s obviously were dominated a lot more by Jordan and the Bulls and stuff. And so, even early on, you kind of see some of the Celtics stuff, some of the leftover 80s team kind of battling Jordan. But for the most part, then they fade. So is this book really also just celebrating or recognizing timing? Because sports fans tend to get impatient, right? When somebody gets drafted or a team is championship or bust, these kind of phrases, we get impatient with timing. Players need time to develop. And it was just everything needed to come together, as you said. You need to get Doc Rivers. You needed to get Danny Ainge. You need to make the Kevin Garnett trade in 2007. So is this a book about timing and patience as well?
I would say it's about building and vision. And you're right, timing and patience, do go into that. If you have a vision and you don't have time to put it into place, then all right, it's not going to work, right? So that was part of it for Danny Ainge, coming in his first trade, on paper, you look at it and say, that's not a great trade. Your first major move is trading Antoine Walker and get back, Yuri Welsh and, Chris Mills, and you get a first round pick. You get Rafe LaFrentz and that contract. Hey, what's he doing? Why is he trading for that contract? And so if you just look at it, if you're looking for that splash, that initial splash from Danny Ainge, you didn't get it. But he's a guy who told them when they were interviewing him, said, look, I believe in franchise stability. I don't believe in coming in and firing a coach. I don't believe in just a quick fix and making the playoffs, and that's good enough. I really want to build a championship organization. And he sold them on that. And the irony of Danny Ainge saying that is so unusual. It's still unusual for general managers to say, I want stability. in the front office. Now the team is a different story because Danny was very aggressive with trading with the roster, but people around him, scouts and coaches, people in the front office, he wanted that to be as stable as possible as long as those people were doing their jobs. The irony there is that the coach he inherited, Jim O'Brien, wasn't used to anybody thinking like that. So Danny meets Jim O'Brien. He talks with him for like 3 or 4 days and said, "That's my guy," and he gives him a contract extension. Jim O'Brien starts looking at the moves of Danny and says, "He's crazy. Like, I'm trying to win games right now." And Danny says, "Don't worry about right now, Jim. Mm-hmm. This is not the championship team. I'm not judging you on going 35 and 47 in year one if that's what happened. This is the long game." And so they really couldn't get on the same page because Jim O'Brien didn't see that long game, and he didn't necessarily trust it because he didn't know Danny that well, even though Danny had given him a contract extension. So there are a lot of things that play into this. When you see it, it's patience and it's building. That first trade, I told you that wasn't great with Antoine to get that first round pick. Well, that first round pick, they were able to trade that again and start building some of the pieces that built the 2008 championship team. So they were able to trade Ray LaFrance and create salary cap space. And they traded Yuri Welsh. They were able to get a first rounder back for Yuri Welsh. And, all these things. And that they traded one of their free agents, Mike James. And the trade for Mike James turned into a draft pick that became, Tony Allen. And so they're just doing all these things. Danny's his first draft pick, Marcus Banks, not very good. But in the same draft, he drafts Kendrick Perkins at the back of the first round. So here's Kendrick Perkins. He doesn't look like he's going to be a starting center on the championship team in 2005. Nobody's thinking that. But by 2008, there he is, a mainstay with that starting five. And by the time he's traded, in 2011, people are incensed. Like, how do they trade Perk? He's bigger. So you think about everything about the progression. He's drafted in 2003. He's not really appreciated until about 5 years later, or 4 years. I'll call it 4 years later, the 2007, 2008 season. So he's not really appreciated until 4 years later, and then 4 years after that, people are saying, how can we live without Perk? I mean, that happens. It's not just with the Celtics. It happens a lot in the NBA where we're so used to looking for immediate answers, immediate gratification. And sometimes it takes a while. If you've got the right person to build your team, you got to trust that they know what they're doing. Now, if they prove that they don't know what they're doing time after time, then, yeah, you got to move on. But Danny, in the front, he always had support of ownership because they just believed in the way he looked at the NBA and the way he looked at this roster.
So I want to stay with the acknowledgments because there's a section in the acknowledgments where you write about prayer and virtually attending churches. And I want to know, just to kind of extend the thread of what you're just talking about now, does your spiritual faith, does it mirror the faith that sports fans have? Is it the same kind of hope for things that are unseen and recognizing that, yeah, this may work out, but right now it doesn't look so good. Trading Antoine Walker, it doesn't look so good, but you got to have faith.
Yeah, that's a good way of looking at it. I haven't thought of it that way, but I agree with it. I agree with your analysis of that. I am a child of the church. I just am. As I wrote in the acknowledgement, my great grandfather started a church that still exists today, Mount Calvary, of course, Calvary, Baptist. Mount Calvary, yes. Mount Calvary Baptist Church in Akron, Ohio. He was a co-founder of it, the pastor of it. It's our family church. My grandmother and my grandfather met at that church. So it's my grandmother's father, her church, and she meets one of the ministers there. So my grandfather was a reverend. And so my mom, she didn't have the title of reverend, but, PBS has a series right now called The Black Church.
Yeah, Henry Gates.
Oh yeah, it's great. It's great.
Yeah.
And I'm watching it, and at one point they're talking about the AME Church, which was founded by Richard Allen,
Mm-hmm.
and uh, in the church, and there was this whole division over race, and so the white Methodist Church, they did not let women preach, and so now the black congregants break off, led by Richard Allen. They start their own AME. They start their own church. And there's a woman in the congregation who says, I think I've been called to preach. And Richard Allen says, well, so be it. Yes, you are. And so she was a preacher, which was a pretty unusual and still unusual in some churches. And I say that, I give you that whole preamble because I think my mother I think she was called to preach. Like she teaches Sunday school classes and, missionary and all these things. A great woman of faith and woman of God. But I think, at a different time, she would have been Reverend Holley too. So it's been influential in my life, and I'm very open, and I can tell you that there's no way I would have been able to complete this project without prayer, and just without study, without some of these preachers and teachers of the gospel. And so, yeah, hope is a big part of it. Like, I'm always hopeful. I always say, I think Cornel West once said, I love the way he said it. He said, I'm not optimistic, I'm hopeful. Optimism, you don't necessarily, you can't be optimistic. Some of the things you see, you're not optimistic about them, but you're hopeful that things will change. And so I'm always, my faith is, that's one of the tenets. That's one of the foundational points, that any situation can turn around, that we believe in redemption, that anyone and anything is redeemable. So, yeah, I think you could certainly make the parallel, Sammy. No question. You can make the parallel between sports fans who are looking at a hopeless situation and faith, where you look at something and everybody else is looking at you like, I don't know why you're so hopeful. This looks like a mess. And then you get on the other side of it and say, all right, well, this was some diligence and some patience. We got there. I mean, you see it in all sports. I mean, you see it this year. Hey, here how about the NFL? Great example this year. In the NFL, your Super Bowl champion, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. What? Yeah. They were 7-9. They were 7-9 last year. They hadn't made the playoffs in 14 years. They hadn't won a championship in 19 years. And then here comes Tom Brady, and there's a whole feeling, a different feeling about the franchise. I mean, it happens in sports quite often. And you may have just uncovered something. Maybe that's my connection to sports. It reminds me of faith in some ways.
Yeah, I mean, football, to continue your analogy, like, football has very, like, many miracle catches, right? There's, like, actual names for these things. And even what you were saying before about your mom, like, I guess the reverend or the pastor is usually the franchise player, right? That's the big name that everyone goes to see, the LeBron James or the Jordan or whatever it may be. But your mom, even though she's not the pastor or recognized as the reverend or whatever it may be, role players have a huge, like, pivotal role in championships, and we've seen that repeatedly, right? Like, yes, your book is about the big three, but Rondo was coming along and he needed to chip in, and he did stuff as well. Bench guys chipped in as well. So it's not always like a church is the same way. It operates in the same way as an NBA team, right? Where, like, you commit at the beginning of the season that, for glory, for future glory, and you hope that it works out.
That's right. That's right. Now it sounds like you quoting the Apostle Paul. Now you've done the preach here. Now I like it. But yeah, I think that is an astute point. Any pastor who is really doing it the right way will tell you that. There are some people, and there's some quote unquote celebrity pastors who really like the celebrity aspect of the job, and then there's some pastors who have great popularity. They're compelling. They are grounded. They're grounded in the scriptures, and they have a really good way of making it relevant and making a connection between antiquity and 2021. But a lot of them will tell you, listen, I'm here. I'm just a vessel. I'm a vessel. I'm not trying to be. I'm not the superstar. I cannot do my job unless I can't do my job well unless everybody contributes to this body. I'm just one. I'm just one person. I can't lead the choir. I can't lead the deacon board. I'm not on the hospitality committee. Like everybody's got a part in making the organization run. That sounds familiar, doesn't it? That's Ubuntu. With Doc Rivers introduced in 2007. He said, look, I am because you are. And so I'm not asking you to take away anything individual from your game, Kevin Garnett or Paul Pierce or Ray Allen, not take it all away, but I want you to bring your gift to the collective, and they will recognize who you are, but you need to recognize who they are as well. And how does it work for all of us? How do we get this all together? All of these various gifts. How do we take advantage of being an eclectic group and then unifying to produce a championship? And they bought into it. And they achieved greatness. See, I think that's what it takes. Because really, Sammy, if I'm being honest about it, if I look at the Celtics teams throughout history, all of their championship teams. All right, the big three as a team, I'd say they were one of my favorites. I could see them playing in any era. Like Bill Russell liked watching them play. He was really smitten with Garnett, but he really liked watching them play. And so Bill Russell,
that's the blessing right there.
So he's representing the '60s, and John Havlicek was still alive, and I used to see him at the Garden along with JoJo White, those teams from the '70s, and they liked watching them play. And then Danny, the architect of this team from the '80s, obviously he put the team together, and he enjoyed watching them. But so this was a team that could fit into any era as a collective. But if I did an individual draft, team by team, I'm not saying that a big three are the best championship team in Celtics history. It would probably be, 1963 or 1964 Celtics, where John Havlicek is like the seventh guy on the roster. Young John Havlicek. And they got Russell, and they got Cousy, and they got Heinsohn, Phil, and Sam Jones. So that proves the point. Sometimes somebody's going to have more talent than you if you just look at it individually. But if you pool what you have together with what somebody else has, you might be able to come up with something special that kind of supersedes somebody's greater talent.
What you're talking about, there's a great moment in terms of buy-in and Doc Rivers where you can tell the story where he put 2,600 in the ceiling.
Yeah, right. So that was and they came up just short that year. That was in 2010, and that year it was really it was a struggle for the Celtics. They were the fourth seed in the Eastern Conference. They won 50 games. They had championship aspirations, but they couldn't get going throughout the season. They win 5 games, lose 3 games, win 6, lose 3 or 4 more. Up and down, back and forth. They had some injuries. The chemistry they couldn't get right because at that point, Ray Allen was starting to be, slightly phased out a bit as the third guy of the big three. And by 2010, a big member of the pushing that big three door was Rondo. So you can even make the argument that by 2010, Rondo was the third guy and Allen was the fourth guy, or he was 3B. Rondo was 3A and Allen was 3B. So they had some issues. And Rondo and Allen, they had a little bit of a shaky relationship. But as they were struggling, they were out in Los Angeles on a West Coast trip, and Doc Rivers said, "Look, hey guys, I'm going to take, give me, I'd like $100 from everybody." And they didn't know where he was going. Garnett's like, "Well, what are you doing? You get $100. What do you mean, coach?" And so Doc Rivers told him what it was. Garnett got very excited about the idea, gets all this money. They put it in the ceiling above the visitors' locker room in Staples Center. That was their last trip out of the regular season. And Doc said, "Hey, when we come back here, we're going to retrieve our money." And that was his way of saying, "Yes, I believe you're a championship team." And sure enough, they go into the postseason. In the second round, they're able to knock out the Cavaliers, who were the best team, who were the number one team in the East and Eastern Conference Finals. They were able to knock out the Orlando Magic, and they get to the NBA Finals, and they take it to Game 7 against the Lakers. But the Lakers just crushed them on the boards in Game 7, and they lost that NBA Finals. So a lot of people ask me about this, and the reason I go into detail about that season is a lot of people ask, well, hey, did the Big Three, did they underperform? Because, you talk about all these great things, but ultimately they only won one championship. And I'd say if you look at it just on the surface, you can make that argument. But look at it. I just mentioned they went to Game 7 of the 2010 finals. And in 2009, I would argue that team was better than the championship team. They started off 27-2 in the 2008-2009 season. But once KG got hurt, not only did that change their fortunes for that season, it kind of changed the kind of player Kevin Garnett was. It kind of robbed him, that injury, he had a knee injury that robbed him of his stamina and kind of took him away from being a MVP type player. Still a very good, very smart player, but MVP, that was the death of MVP Garnett right there in early 2009.
So then how are you classifying your book? Is the Big Three, is this a love letter or a labor of love?
Oh, it's definitely a labor of love because it's basketball. Basketball is the sport, is the only sport that I could kind of sort of play, but not really. It was a sport that I played, or let me more accurately, I was on basketball teams. Mm-hmm. I was not a basketball player. I was on basketball teams. So from a conceptual standpoint, I love 5 guys working together. I love the camaraderie. I love the rhythm of the game. I just wasn't very good, Sammy. It just wasn't, my range was probably, my shooting range, 5 feet men. So anything outside 5 feet, like, I'd be wide open. I'd be wide open to like 12 or 15 feet, and I'm more likely to I'm either going to drive into traffic when I'm wide open for 12 or 15 because I don't want to take that shot, or I'm going to pass it up. So, but I just love the game. I used to think about it. I used to, I wrote about it before I even knew what I was writing about. I was just obsessed with basketball. So it's a labor of love. Love letter, in some senses, yes. I would say a love letter, but not a personal love letter from me to the game. I'd say a love letter with other voices, so a community love letter. Mm-hmm. Because there are a lot of people involved there. A lot of voices in the Big Three. There's the Big Three itself, and then the people who built the team, and the people who kind of came through, who were almost a part of it, but not really. So Antoine Walker, almost a part of it, not really. Danny Ainge traded him, reacquired him, traded him again. Chris Wallace was there. He's the one who drafted Paul Pierce, but he left just before they won the championship. His story is a part of it too. So it's just, I told a friend of mine a couple of months ago, we were just talking about the pandemic in general and things that we miss. And we all miss odd things. I mean, the obvious things we all miss are, just the freedom to walk around and talk to people and gather in large groups. But I was saying to my friend, I really miss basketball people. Yeah. Like basketball, there's just something about talking to people who love basketball. And they're like me, can't play, but they just love the game. Mm-hmm. It's just a perspective that they have. And I just miss talking to them. So I would say it's a love letter in that sense because it's the perspective of basketball people who also happen to be, whether they be talented players or executives or fans, those basketball people are represented in this book.
You mentioned community. I want to expand that community a little bit because you've written about the Boston Red Sox, of course, Tom Brady, Belichick, the Patriots. Since about 2000, Boston has had many championship parades. Is there anything sort of like consistent that these teams do? Are there consistent traits? Are there consistent culture? Like, what is it about these Boston teams that makes them so successful?
Well, I've heard a couple theories on this. So some people think it's just luck. Okay, that's your easy answer, right? It's just
Yeah.
luck. They just get lucky, and out of all those parades, like half dozen of them go to the Patriots.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, isn't it lucky? All right, I'll factor in luck. I'll give it 3% luck. I'll consider it. That's my way of saying, if you go with the luck theory, I'm going to give that validity.
Fair enough.
But what I really think it is teams pushing one another and kind of peeking over to see, okay, what did you do to win your championship, and how does that translate to my sport? All right, so for example, the Patriots are the first one of the 21st century. The Patriots win it first. And how did the Patriots win it in 2001? Everybody, I still remember there was a story in ESPN magazine. This was right after the time where that movie, A Beautiful Mind,
Mm-hmm.
came out. And so I remember the art in ESPN magazine where it said, Bill Belichick's beautiful mind. And it kind of had him in the shape of like a Oscar.
Yeah. Yeah.
And but that was their point. Their point was, this team is a champion because they have outsmarted. They've outsmarted everyone. Yeah, they got talented players, but they have been more intelligent, more thoughtful than their competition. So they went in 2001. But you're in a city that values that. All the colleges and universities in the Boston area, in New England in general, but specifically in Boston, I mean, home of Harvard, home of MIT, and the greatest university of them all, Boston University, teach there. But Northeastern, Boston College, you have so many great universities in this area. This is an area that values the life of the mind. This is an area that values high thought. So Bill Belichick and the Patriots win in 2001. What did the Red Sox do in 2002? They hired this whiz kid, smart guy from the Ivy League, Theo Epstein, youngest general manager in baseball history, at 28 in 2002. They win in 2004 because he is willing to make some moves that are unconventional, such as trading Nomar Garciaparra in the middle of the 2004 season and embracing analytics and old school scouting scouting methods. So they see that happening, and then the Celtics, right in there, are hiring Danny Ainge, and they're looking at his ability to embrace old school scouting and analytics, which we talk about in the Big Three. So, I do think there's a mental aspect here. And then the Bruins changed their whole outlook, because for years they had the same people, they had the same system year after year. They were criticized for it. There was only X amount of money that they spend, and they had the same thinkers and same decision makers year after year. And they finally, in 2005, changed it up and brought in Peter Chiarelli to run their operation. And they signed two big-time free agents, one of them being Zdeno Chara. So, and that's a long way of saying, Sammy, look, it's not a coincidence. I think the Patriots started it off with the smart team. This is the way we're going to do business, and we're going to be successful here. We're not going to do it like everybody else. We're going to have talent. We got to have talent like everybody else, but our decision-making has to be a little bit sharper. We got to be ahead of the curve. And the Red Sox followed, and the Celtics followed, and the Bruins followed, and here we are in 2021. We got a bunch of championships. I don't think that's all luck. I think it's some luck, but not all. I think it's intentional. So, yeah, I mean, I think that's why we're sitting here in 21 talking about a dozen championships in Boston since February of 2002.
Yeah, and your book too, the way it opens up with the Celtics being sold, Danny Ainge being hired, he had an original coach that he inherited that wasn't Doc Rivers at that time. It mirrors very much the way that Robert Kraft eventually bought the Patriots. He had Parcells, and Parcells didn't quite get the vision of what he wanted to do, and he was kind of old school. So he had to go. So then they brought in Belichick. Like there's a lot of parallels between the two and how they kind of ignited and rebirthed their teams.
Yeah, and I think the big thread between Wick, Grossbeck, and Robert Kraft, who are friends, by the way, were friends before Wick bought the Celtics, is that there's something to be said for just pure joy and pure passion for a team. Look, you can't just go out there and say my joy, my enthusiasm is going to be enough to run a multi-billion-dollar or multi-million-dollar operation. That's not enough. I need to have some training too, but that goes a long way. I said to my wife the other day, we were just having a conversation, and I said, you know what, if I ever started a business, or if I ever ran one of these media operations, I run a network or a newspaper, put me in charge of the New York Times, put me in charge of the Wall Street Journal, whatever. I said, the person I'm looking for, the separator, is somebody who just loves it.
Yeah.
Like, I want good people. I want conscientious people. I want somebody who's going to approach the job and they're so into it that they're not keeping score. There are clock watchers and there are people who perform the job. Now, clock watchers, they always let you know. Like, I've worked with them. You've worked with them. You've seen them. Clock watchers, they tell you exactly when they got in. They'll tell you exactly when it's time to go. Oh, hey, look, hey, they won't be there a minute past 5 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
Like, hey, wait a minute. Hey, it's time to go. If there's vacation time, I believe in vacations. Trust me, I do believe in taking vacations. I think it's good for your mental health. But the clock watchers will not miss a single vacation day.
Mm-hmm.
Clock watchers, they make up holidays to see if they can get vacation for them. Whereas people who just love the job, you got to remind them. They get so lost in the work. You say, look, hey, do you realize you've been sitting there for like 9 hours and you haven't moved? You just totally engrossed in what you're doing. That's what I want. Because that's passion. Don't tell me you have the ability to do the job. I think a lot of people have the ability to do a lot of these jobs, not professional sports, I'm just talking about in general. But what makes somebody great is they bring their personality to it. They bring their energy to it. And that job, they turn it into something else. They turn it into a work of art just because they're so passionate about it. I think both of those guys are like that. I think like Kraft loves football. He loves sports. He loves Boston. Wick is the same way. Like even like his, and I write about this in the book. Both Steve Paliuca and Bob Epstein said, business-wise, what you're asking me to do does not make sense. You're asking me to spend a lot of money to be your co-owner for this team. A lot of people don't come to the games. It's making money, but not a ton of money. I'm a businessman. Like, why are you asking me to do this? But it was their love for the Celtics that kind of superseded their love for business. So that got them there. And now it turns out that because of their passion for business and the Celtics are now one of the top revenue teams in the NBA, but they weren't when those guys became co-owners.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was going to say, it reminded me of the 90s commercial for the NBA, for the love of the game, right?
Yep.
And that was what they centered everything around. And the reason why Michael Jordan left for a couple of years in the middle there was because the love had kind of died, or it wasn't as hot anymore, right? You couldn't, the coals were kind of dark now, right? They weren't heating up anymore. And so he had to step away. But I think it's just like anything else when, if you break up with your girl for a little bit and you realize, yo, I'm letting her get away, like you go back to her and you're like, yo, baby, I'm sorry I stepped away, right? Like you recognize what you have because it's special. And so anytime, like you said, you could do something out of love, it's a lot better than doing it out of like fear or punishment.
Obligation.
Yeah, all these other things.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And don't you dare break up with her Don't you break up with her. And if you do, hey, listen, if you do, hey, maybe that's it. Maybe that was your shot. That was your opportunity.
Yeah. All right.
You go somewhere else.
We gotta leave it there. That's we gave a little message for the kids.
That's right.
Where can people find you online to know more about your writing, your work on Boston sports, Brother from Another on Peacock, which I'm sorry we didn't cover. But where can people find you online to find all these kind of cool things you're doing?
Well, you just mentioned that. That's one of them. Brother from Another on Peacock, 3 to 5 Eastern Time, Monday through Friday. So that's one of the spots. Twitter, at Michael S. Holley. If you want the book, my first thing I say to everybody is I love independent bookstores. So I'll always shout out your local independent bookstore first. If that is something you want to do, even if you're saying, well, wait a minute, I'm not even nowhere near Boston. My independent bookstore is not going to have it. Well, your independent bookstore will order it. I'd say support them first. That's one way of doing it. You can also go to Amazon, old school way, order it that way as well. But yeah, I mean, I love doing this, and thanks for the opportunity, man. Thanks for the opportunity to talk with you about this. As you can tell, I'm pretty fired up about it. It's something that's really important to me and meaningful. So I'm glad that you've taken some interest in it and given me a platform to talk about it.
Oh, thank you. It was an interesting era because, as you said, there's many different Celtics teams and different Celtics eras. And I'm old enough to remember seeing these guys, the big three: Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett, Ray Allen, and just recognizing that was a special team. Like you could see that they were set up for success. And I always felt that Kevin Garnett spent a little bit too much time in Minnesota, with the T-Wolves. Whether it was loyalty or not, we saw later on, we saw how Karl Malone and Gary Payton were on that one Lakers team. I think Garnett should have maybe left a little bit earlier, but to pick up on one of the threads we talked about, which is timing, it worked out in the end.
Yeah, sure did. He wound up with the right people around him, with the right coach and two perfect teammates for his game. They really complemented his game, Paul Pierce and Ray Allen. So, yeah, I'm glad we all got a chance to see it. It was an interesting team to watch and up close, just an interesting team to study with all the dynamics and different personalities.
So yeah, the book is The Big Three: Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett, Ray Allen, and the rebirth of the Boston Celtics. And thank you so much for your time. We covered quite a bit. We covered the love of the game, stay with your girl if don't blow your shot. We covered the Big Three, the Celtics family, and faith and hope. I think we did quite a bit of work.
Yeah. That's it. Yeah, that's it. That's we could all of those are all could be separate podcasts themselves. So do that at about just under an hour. I think that's a record. So
yeah.
Hey, thanks, man. Good job. I really enjoyed it. Truly.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and like I said, high five for the book. You did a great job. I was excited to read about that era, and I didn't know all that stuff about Rondo, for example. So I always thought he was a great player, and I never really fully understand. What happened? Why did the Celtics kind of break up with him? How did he end up where he ended up? You know what I mean? So it was really interesting to see that backstory. So thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yo, that was sports writer Michael Holley. This is my Summer Lair, and I am Sammy. Loyalty is an interesting trait in the NBA. I often felt Garnett was too loyal to the T-Wolves. He should have left earlier. We saw that one Lakers team with Karl Malone, Gary Payton, right? That super team. They left their teams because loyalty was shortchanging them. It wasn't working anymore. I gotta see other teams. Kevin Garnett was frustrated from 2004 to 2007. He was drafted in 1995. It's such an interesting subplot to Michael's NBA book, The Big Three: Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett, Ray Allen, and the rebirth of the Boston Celtics. As a Boston sports writer, he's written about Tom Brady, yet Tom Brady left New England. Paul Pierce, granted he was traded, yet he left Boston. Ray Allen infamously went to Miami. When Kobe retired in 2016, part of his legacy was he played for only one team. That is a long, hard marriage. The Lakers and Kobe kept their promises as recited on draft night. I suspect Curry will do the same with the Warriors. I think that'll be one of the last ones we'll see like that. Most every other major franchise player has more or less played for more than one team. Maybe honest. Anyways, if you want to hang out with Michael Holley, head on over to Peacock, where he and Michael Smith co-host Brother from Another, sports, culture, entertainment, and politics. It kind of mirrors this conversation that I had with Michael. That's a fun party every weekday afternoon on Peacock, Brother from Another. As for me, you can RSVP to my social media party, My Summer Lair, for all three: Twitter and IG and Facebook. Super simple in a complicated world. And please, can I be honest here? Don't just blindly follow me. I don't need the dopamine hits. They're great, but I don't need them. Add to the conversation. Let's talk about these things. Tell me who are some of your favorite Celtics players. Give me your top 5. Your top 5 Celtic players. Not the best players, not the greatest players, just the ones that you dig the most. My Summer Lair for all three: Twitter, IG, and Facebook. See, now that's a much better reason to click and follow, right? We can have a conversation. We can get into all this. Thank you for listening to me in a Netflix world. Celtics, yo.